Have you ever felt like there's something bigger waiting inside you? That the life you're living now is just a tiny shadow of your true potential? We work, we dream, we run, but somehow there's a voice inside that whispers, "You have unlived this life to its full potential." Every civilization was born from a dream. Ancient Egypt, with its pyramids, the Industrial Revolution, with its steam engine. Even today's digital world all began with someone daring to dream the seemingly impossible. The question is, what happens when we lose the courage to dream big? Are we still truly living, or are we simply drifting along with the flow dictated by others? Tony Robbins begins his book journey with a simple yet soul-stirring message. Your life is controlled by the dreams you choose to pursue. Some people let their dreams fade away due to pressure, fear, or doubt. Others, instead, use their dreams as a compass that guides their every step. The difference in a person's fate is often determined by one thing: whether they dare to nurture their dreams or let them die a slow death. Imagine a child gazing at the night sky. Behind his gaze lies a boundless imagination, to become an explorer, a scientist, or an artist. But over time, voices from outside begin to creep in. It's too hard. It's unrealistic. Don't dream too much. Slowly, the star fades, replaced by a passionless routine. This is the loneliest tragedy when someone stops believing in their own dreams. But history has always proven that those who change the world aren't the smartest or strongest, but those who refuse to give up on their dreams. Thomas Edison failed thousands of times before the light bulb was lit. Oprah Winfrey overcame trauma and poverty before becoming an icon. Even Robbins himself, who lived through hardship in his youth, once said that it was pain that fueled his determination to create change. This first chapter is not just an invitation to dream, but a declaration. Dreams are the beginning of destiny. Without vision, we wander aimlessly. With vision, even the most intense suffering can become fuel to leap further. Robbins emphasizes that there is no destiny more powerful than the personal decision to say, "I will live my life according to my dreams, not merely according to circumstances." But dreams without action are just illusions. Robbins invites us to look deeper. If you truly dare to dream, what is the first step you can take today? This question is groundbreaking because it doesn't ask us to wait for perfect conditions. It simply asks for the courage to start. Because often the first step, no matter how small, is enough to change the course of your entire life. And this is where the true journey begins. Dreams of Destiny is a gateway to the next chapters, an invitation to live not by chance but by intention. Just as a director writes his own film script, we too are invited to write the story of our lives. The question is simple, yet profound. Will you dare to rekindle a once extinguished dream and let it lead you to the destiny you were meant to live? Human life is essentially a collection of decisions. From simple choices like what we eat today to major decisions that determine the course of our lives. Choosing a partner, a career, or even a faith. But beneath the complexity of the world, Robbins emphasizes an undeniable principle. The quality of our lives is a reflection of the quality of the decisions we make. The question is, are we truly conscious of every decision that shapes our lives? History is replete with examples of how a single decision changed everything. When Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat on the bus, her act seemed small, but it ignited the civil rights movement in America. When Steve Jobs decided to return to Apple after being fired, it ushered in a new era of technology. It is at these crucial moments that we see that true strength comes not from external circumstances, but from a strong inner resolve. Unfortunately, many people don't truly make decisions. They procrastinate, wait, or let circumstances decide for them. Robbins calls this the illusion of life, the illusion of feeling like we're remaking a choice when we're actually just going with the flow. And even more dangerously, every time we avoid a decision, we're actually making a decision to stay put, to stay the same, to stay stuck. A true decision, Robbins says, has two characteristics. First, it's clear. We know what we're choosing, without hesitation. Second, it's consistent. We act in harmony with that decision, despite challenges. Without consistency, a decision is just empty words. Herein lies its power. Once we make a total decision, we access previously hidden energy. Consider everyday life. Someone who makes a firm decision to quit smoking without giving up hope for a comeback often succeeds. Meanwhile, those who try or see later almost always fail. Not because they lack the ability, but because they haven't truly decided. Robbins asserts that once the decision is final, our brains begin to search for ways to make it happen. But making big decisions is always scary because they carry risks. This is the human dilemma. Fear of making mistakes, but also being unable to live in stasis. Robbins encourages us to view decisions not as a finish line, but as the beginning of a learning curve. There is no perfect decision. There is only a commitment to continually adjust our actions after we choose. From this process, strength and clarity are born. Ultimately, decisions are the path to freedom. By boldly choosing, we take control of a destiny that once felt foreign. Robbins concludes this chapter with a gentle but firm warning. A life of procrastination is a life wasted. So ask yourself today, what decision have you been putting off that, if you had the courage to make it now, would change the course of your life forever? Every human being essentially lives with an invisible engine that drives every step, decision, and even the direction of their life. Robbins calls this engine a belief system, a system of beliefs that shapes how we view the world, how we judge ourselves, and what we consider possible or impossible. The question that arises is, do we truly choose these beliefs, or are they subconsciously instilled by our environment, childhood, and experiences? History offers many examples. An athlete who believes he can break a world record even when everyone else doubts him often succeeds. Just look at Roger Bannister, the first runner to break the 4-minute mile record, a feat considered physiologically impossible at the time. Once he succeeded, dozens of others followed suit. What changed? It's not the human body, but the collective belief that it was possible. But beliefs aren't always a liberating force. They can be a confining prison. Someone who grows up believing I'm not smart or I don't deserve to be happy will live their life according to that script, even when the world offers opportunities to the contrary. Robbins emphasizes that our lives are rarely influenced by objective reality. They're more often controlled by the subjective reality we believe in. Herein lies both the magic and the danger. Beliefs aren't facts, but they act as if they were. Beliefs can be born from a single intense experience, from the words of a parent, or even from the culture we live in. And once they take root, they become the lens through which all new experiences are filtered. Like a director determining the genre of a film, our beliefs determine whether life feels like tragedy, comedy, or triumph. Robbins invites us to pause and ask ourselves, what beliefs have shaped our lives? Are we living with empowering beliefs, or are we living with binding beliefs? Many people live with old programs that have been passed down unconsciously, like outdated software that has never been updated. Yet, if beliefs can be shaped, they can also be changed. The good news is, we have the power to redesign our belief systems. This isn't done by denying reality, but by creating new experiences powerful enough to replace old ones. Robbins gives an example. Someone who is afraid of public speaking may have developed a negative belief from a single embarrassing childhood experience. But by gathering new experiences, no matter how small, they can cultivate a different belief that they are capable, that their voice deserves to be heard. Ultimately, the force that shapes your life is an invitation to become the architects of our own beliefs. Because if we don't design them, other society, the media, even our past will do it for us. And a life shaped by someone else's beliefs is merely a borrowed life. So the philosophical question is, what beliefs do you choose to form the foundation of your destiny? Because ultimately, it's not circumstances that shape your life, but the beliefs you nurture within it. There's a great paradox in human life. The same force that can lift a person to greatness can also plunge them into misery. That force is a belief system, the invisible network that connects our thoughts, emotions, and daily actions. Robbins emphasizes that beliefs are the mental maps we use to navigate life. But the question is, are those maps truly accurate, or are they merely limited reflections of past experiences? History has shown how belief can create civilization. Explorers sailed across uncharted seas, convinced that new worlds lay beyond the horizon. Scientists challenged dogma, convinced that truth could be discovered through experimentation. But belief can also be destructive. Religious wars, racial discrimination, and even genocide all stemmed from misguided beliefs held firmly by millions. Robbins encourages us to understand that beliefs aren't just abstract thoughts, but rather emotional energy that we invest repeatedly. When we believe something, we create a self-reinforcing mental pattern. For example, someone who believes they're worthless will find proof in every small failure. Even though failure is simply a natural part of life, beliefs work like filters that filter reality. Only what aligns with them makes it through. However, precisely because beliefs are constructs, they can be reshaped. Robbins says that changing beliefs is like changing the foundation of a building. Scary, but entirely possible. The key is to create new emotional experiences, powerful enough to challenge old patterns. A shy person who consistently experiences small social successes can eventually build a new belief that they are capable of connecting with others. Interestingly, Robbins doesn't ask us to erase old beliefs altogether, but rather to examine and expand them. A simple question can open the door to change. Is this belief truly helping me, or is it holding me back? By asking this question, we take the first step toward breaking free from the prison we've built for ourselves. True power arises when we realize we can choose our beliefs. The belief that failure is a teacher, not an end. The belief that life is an opportunity, not a burden. The belief that every human being, including ourselves, has the capacity to grow. This is the belief that empowers, that creates, that awakens the giant within. Robbins concludes this chapter with a challenging message. The outer world may be full of uncertainty, but our inner world is defined by the beliefs we nurture. And ultimately, belief is a dual force. It can be both creative and destructive. The choice is ours. Will we continue to live with old, limiting beliefs, or will we dare to cultivate new ones that open the door to a future greater than we ever imagined? Most people believe that change is a long and tedious process. We often hear phrases like, "It takes years to truly change." But Robbins challenges this notion with a simple question. Does change really take that long? Or can it actually happen instantly in a single moment of decision? Human history is filled with stories of sudden change. An alcoholic who quit after nearly losing his family, an entrepreneur who left a well-established business after realizing his life was empty and meaningless, or the personal story of someone who decided to no longer be a victim of the past, but instead a creator of the future. These changes may seem sudden, but they are actually the culmination of accumulated pain and realizations that finally explode in a single decision. Robbins explains that it's not the change itself that takes time, but the process leading up to the decision to change. For years, a person may struggle with a bad habit, but when a tipping point is reached, change can happen in an instant. The moment we truly say, "Enough. I'm not going to live like this anymore," the direction of our lives shifts in that instant. However, instant change doesn't come without challenges. What determines the sustainability of change is commitment and strategy after the decision is made. Someone might decide to quit smoking in one day, but without a new system to support that decision, a new environment, new habits, a new identity, the change can easily collapse. In other words, the moment of change happens instantly, but maintaining it requires ongoing awareness. Imagine an individual who has long believed he or she is not good enough. One day, after a painful experience, he or she decides that belief is wrong. In that moment, his or her life will never be the same again. But to maintain this new belief, he or she must continue to build supportive experiences, healthy relationships, real work, and consistent action. Change begins in an instant, but is reinforced through habit. Robbins calls this phenomenon the emotional threshold. We all reach a point where the pain of remaining in the same situation far outweighs the fear of change. When that point is reached, change is inevitable. The question is, will we wait until circumstances force us to, or will we make the bold decision before it's too late? The chapter concludes with a poignant reflection. Our lives can change in an instant. The very moment we decide that change is absolute, unconditional, and without retreat. The external world may remain the same, but in that moment, our inner world is transformed completely. And just as the power of a small spark can ignite a vast forest, a single-second decision can ignite a new journey that will define an entire life. What makes us repeat the same patterns, even though we know they're harmful? Why does someone continue to smoke despite knowing the risks, or procrastinate despite knowing their time is precious? Robbins answers with a scientific concept. Humans aren't driven by logic, but by associations of pain and pleasure embedded in their nervous systems. This is the essence of neuroassociative conditioning, NAC. Imagine Pavlov's dog trained with the sound of a bell and food. Over time, the bell itself was enough to make the dog salivate. Similarly, in humans, repeated experiences form strong emotional associations. If we associate exercise with suffering, we will avoid it. Conversely, if we associate learning with freedom and progress, we will continue to seek it. Our lives are shaped by these association patterns, often without our awareness. Robbins emphasizes that true change occurs when we break down old associations and create new, stronger ones. A smoker, for example, must reach a point where cigarettes are truly associated with pain, loss of health, family, even self-esteem. At the same time, they must associate freedom from cigarettes with pleasure, relief, renewed energy, and a sense of control. Without replacing associations, change is only temporary. NAC works in 6 steps. First, decide what you truly want to change. Second, find emotional leverage, a reason so compelling that it's impossible not to act. Third, disrupt the old pattern, change the routine, the social circle, even the way of thinking that sustains the bad habit. Fourth, form a new, empowering alternative. Fifth, condition the new pattern with intense repetition. And sixth, ensure the change sticks by rewarding yourself for success. Real-life examples can be seen in the stories of people who have successfully transformed their lives. Some conquered obesity, not simply because they wanted to lose weight, but because they realized that if they didn't change, they wouldn't see their children grow up. Others abandoned addiction because they associated every drink with the destruction of family relationships. These turning points weren't born of cold logic, but rather from emotional outbursts that changed the associations between pain and pleasure. Interestingly, Robbins asserts that our brains are fast-learning machines. Once we associate intense pain with old patterns and intense pleasure with new ones, the brain will automatically find ways to maintain the new habits. This is why NAC is not just a psychological theory, but a practical strategy that can lead to permanent change. This chapter concludes with a challenge. Choose one aspect of your life you want to change. Then apply the principles of NAC. Don't just understand it intellectually. Condition yourself with real-life experience. Because ultimately, life isn't changed by what we know, but by what we associate with pain and pleasure. And when we master this art, we truly hold the key to changing anything in our lives. Many people think they know what they want, but what they're often chasing is just a reflection of what others want. Some chase money, when what they really want is security. Some chase popularity, when what they really need is acceptance. Robbins reminds us that the first step to getting what we truly want is having the courage to break through illusions to separate superficial desires from the true needs of our souls. A philosophical question arises. How can we know what we truly want? The answer lies not in simply looking at a wish list, but in exploring the emotions behind it. If money is the goal, ask, what emotion am I seeking through money? Is it freedom, security, or perhaps recognition? By understanding these core emotions, we no longer get lost chasing symbols, but instead go directly to the source of real fulfillment. Robbins asserts that whatever we pursue ultimately boils down to 2 primary human drives: seeking pleasure and avoiding pain. However, we often misread the map. We think pleasure lies in the outcome, when in fact, it lies in the process. An artist doesn't wait for their work to be finished to feel alive. They find joy in every brushstroke. A runner doesn't simply chase the finish line, they experience life in every breath. To truly achieve what we desire, Robbins offers a strategy: clarity, focus, and consistent action. Clarity means knowing exactly what you're aiming for. Focus means rejecting distractions that tempt us off track. And consistent action means taking daily steps, even small ones, in that direction. Without these 3, our dreams will remain mere empty words that never materialize. Real-life case studies prove this point. Look at great inventors, athletes, or leaders. They not only knew what they wanted, but were also relentless in pursuing it. Thomas Edison didn't just want to invent a light bulb. He was obsessed with it, failing thousands of times. Nelson Mandela didn't just want personal freedom. He sacrificed decades of his life for the freedom of his people. It's in that obsession that dreams become reality. But Robbins makes an important point. Pursuing what we want doesn't mean sacrificing current happiness. Instead, happiness fuels the journey. We must learn to celebrate every small step, because if we postpone happiness until the goal is reached, we may miss the whole meaning of the journey. Life isn't about waiting for the summit, but dancing along the way. This chapter concludes the first section with a personal challenge. Ask yourself, what do you truly desire? Not just what looks good to others, but what gives your life the deepest meaning. Because once we dare to answer honestly, set a clear direction, and act consistently, the outside world will begin to align with our willpower. Here's a simple yet profound secret. We will get what we truly desire when we live in harmony with the truth of our own hearts. Whenever we face a problem, our first instinct is to ask, why is this happening to me? That question sounds natural, but Robbins reminds us that the quality of our lives is determined by the quality of the questions we ask ourselves. Questions are like keys. They can unlock solutions or lock us in a mental prison. Therefore, anyone who wants to master their life must first master the art of asking questions. History provides concrete evidence. Thomas Edison, when faced with hundreds of failed experiments, never asked, "Why did I fail?" but rather, "What can I learn from this?" That question guided his thinking toward possibility, not despair. So do other innovators. They reject debilitating questions and replace them with ones that open new doors. The problem is, most people repeat the same questions every day, and they form patterns in their lives. Someone who constantly asks, "Why am I always unlucky?" will find answers that reinforce their belief that they are unlucky. Meanwhile, someone who asks, "What could I have done better today?" will trigger their brain to search for practical steps that lead to change. Questions create direction, and direction creates destiny. Robbins emphasizes that the human brain is an answer-seeking machine. Once a question is asked, the brain works relentlessly to find the answer, even if it's misleading. This is why we must be careful. The wrong question will produce the wrong answer, and the wrong answer will create the wrong life. But the right question can transform suffering into strength, problems into opportunities, and even failure into victory. We can see concrete examples in everyday life. When a personal relationship breaks down, the question, "Who's to blame?" only breeds conflict. But the question, "What can I do to fix it?" opens the door to reconciliation. In business, the question, "What if it fails?" kills creativity. Conversely, the question, "What if it works?" ignites the courage to try. A single question can shift the entire trajectory of someone's life story. Interestingly, Robbins teaches a simple practice. Create a list of primary questions, questions that will serve as your daily compass. Instead of waking up with complaints, he suggests starting the day with questions like, "What can I be grateful for today?" or "What would make this day great?" These questions aren't just cheap motivational phrases. They're neuropsychological strategies for directing focus, emotions, and actions from the start of the day. This chapter concludes with a profound realization. Our lives are not defined by the answers we have, but by the questions we dare to ask. Questions are the seeds of the future. What we plant today will determine the fruit we reap tomorrow. So ask yourself, what questions have been limiting your life? And what new questions will you use to pave the way to a greater life? Words are the bridge between thought and reality. Robbins asserts that every word we choose is not just a sound or symbol, but a force that shapes our emotional experience. If questions determine the direction of thought, then vocabulary determines the intensity of feelings. A single word can dampen enthusiasm or ignite courage. Let's look at a simple phenomenon. Two people experience the same situation, losing their jobs. One says, "This is a disaster." The other says, "This is an opportunity for a fresh start." The words they choose change their inner worlds. The first feels hopeless, the second feels encouraged. The facts are the same. The only difference is the vocabulary used to describe them. Robbins calls it transformational vocabulary, a conscious practice of choosing the words we use to describe our lives. If we eliminate disempowering words like broken, useless, or impossible, and replace them with empowering ones like challenge, learning, or opportunity, our emotions change. The brain can't separate language from reality. It believes the narratives we repeat. There's an interesting study on this. In cognitive therapy, psychologists found that replacing the word anxious with excited can drastically reduce feelings of fear before an exam or stage performance. Both evoke a pounding heart, but different interpretations create different emotional responses. Robbins wants us to harness this power in our daily lives. Changing our vocabulary means changing our inner state. However, this doesn't mean we should pretend to be positive and turn a blind eye to reality. On the contrary, it's about choosing more accurate and productive vocabulary. Instead of saying, "I'm furious," perhaps we could say, "I'm a little annoyed." By lowering the intensity of our language, we also lower the intensity of negative emotions. Likewise, by increasing our positive language, we can strengthen feelings of gratitude, joy, and hope. Robbins challenges us to create a new dictionary for ourselves, a list of words we will use to replace old, disempowering ones. For example, replacing fear with curiosity or replacing failure with feedback. These small changes, when made consistently, will shape a new emotional identity. We are no longer victims of the language we inherit from our environment, but architects of the language that shapes our future. The words we speak every day are mantras that slowly shape our world. The question now is, are we condemning ourselves with words that weaken, or are we blessing our lives with words that strengthen? Because ultimately, the vocabulary of ultimate success is more than just linguistic theory, is the key to designing our own emotions, actions, and destinies. Everyone has big dreams. But behind those dreams, there's always an invisible wall, a wall of limiting beliefs, fears, and old habits. Robbins opens this chapter with a powerful message. We don't fail because we lack ability, but because we're trapped in a self-imposed bind. As long as we don't untie that bind, we'll continue to twirl in the same place, even if the world presents us with 1,000 opportunities. One powerful metaphor is the circus elephant. From infancy, the elephant was tied to a small peg by a rope. So unable to break free during childhood, it grew up believing the rope still held it back. Yet with its current strength, it could easily break the peg. The same is true for humans. We often carry old wounds, old failures, or old criticisms, and let them dictate our entire lives. Robbins asserts that the biggest block isn't the external world, but the internal one. Fear of rejection, fear of failure, or even fear of success are psychological barriers. They're invisible, but they're evident in the ways we procrastinate, avoid, or belittle ourselves. To break them down, we must have the courage to ask ourselves, are these beliefs true, or are they just habits of mind inherited from the past? But simply breaking down walls isn't enough. Robbins encourages us to dance through life, a metaphor for experiencing the journey with ease, not just an uphill battle. A life lived with excessive tension only breeds more suffering. But when we let go of the rope, drop the burden, and move with joy, we not only achieve success, we enjoy it. There are real-life studies of elite athletes that support this idea. Those who achieve the highest levels of performance are not only driven by rigorous discipline, but also by maintaining a flexible and playful mental state. They break down mental blocks with small rituals, uplifting music, visualizing victory, or even humor amidst pressure. Success, it turns out, is more easily achieved when we dance with it, not against it. Robbins encourages readers to let go of safety ropes that are no longer relevant. Many people cling to old patterns simply because they are afraid of falling, but these ropes are actually holding them back from flying. With the courage to let go, we find the freedom to try, fail, learn, and ultimately transcend. The ropes were never real, they were just old stories we believed for too long. Break down the blocks within. Tear down the walls that hold you back. Let go of the ropes that no longer serve you and dance your way to success. Because true life isn't just about reaching the finish line, but about how we navigate the path with freedom, flexibility, and the courage to celebrate each step. Emotions are the fuel of life. We can have the best strategies, detailed plans, even golden opportunities, but without the right emotions, they will all remain on paper. Robbins asserts that true control over life is not just about logic or planning, but about how we manage the emotions that drive our daily actions. He then introduces 10 emotions that, when nurtured, can become the greatest source of human power. The first emotion is love and warmth. It is the foundation of all human relationships. Without love, success feels empty. The second emotion is gratitude and appreciation, the key to transforming scarcity into abundance. A grateful person will always feel rich, even if materially limited. The third emotion is curiosity, the natural drive to grow. When we are curious, life never stagnates. There is always room for new discoveries. The fourth emotion is passion, the energy that ignites the fire within us. Then comes perseverance and determination, the fifth emotion, which enables us to persevere through the storm. Without determination, big dreams will wither away. The sixth emotion is flexibility, the art of adapting when plans don't go as expected. Like bamboo that bends in the wind, flexibility keeps us going amidst change. The seventh emotion is trust, in oneself, others, and the process of life. Trust gives us the courage to move forward even when the path is unseen. The eighth emotion is joy, which makes life's journey feel worth enjoying. Many people postpone joy until their goal is reached, but true strength comes from celebrating each small step. The ninth emotion is faith, not just self-confidence, but a deep conviction that what we do has meaning. Faith is an anchor that keeps us from being easily shaken. And finally, the 10th emotion, togetherness. Sense of connection to something larger than ourselves, family, community, or even humanity. This is where we find the deepest meaning, because life is not just about me, but about us. Robbins emphasizes that these emotions aren't just lucky gifts. We can train them, choose them, and even consciously cultivate them. Like muscles, emotions strengthen when exercised consistently. By focusing on these 10 emotions, we slowly develop a new emotional identity, no longer victims of circumstances, but creators of circumstances. This chapter reminds us that the greatest strength isn't always visible on the outside, it lies within, in the emotions we allow to grow. The question now is, which emotions do you nurture more often each day? Do you give more space to fear and anger, or to love, gratitude, and joy? The answer will determine not only your day, but also the direction of your life. Life without a vision is like a ship without a compass moving but without direction. Robbins opens this chapter with a powerful message. Humans need a compelling vision of the future to truly live. A compelling future is not just a goal, but an obsession so compelling that it gives meaning to every small step we take today. This is the magnificent obsession, a force that inspires courage, discipline, and even joy amidst struggle. History is replete with figures consumed by this noble obsession. Martin Luther King Jr. didn't just want to change the law. He was obsessed with a vision of freedom and equality so powerful that his words still resonate decades after his death. Walt Disney didn't just want to build a theme park. He was obsessed with creating a world where children and adults could dream together. Their obsessions weren't mere ambitions, but visions that transcended personal interests. Robbins emphasizes that this kind of obsession must be emotional, not just intellectual. A list of goals and objectives won't be enough if it doesn't ignite our hearts. That's why many people fail to pursue New Year's resolution. They write down what they should achieve, not what truly excites them. A compelling future is one that keeps us awake with excitement, not anxiety. However, this obsession doesn't mean blindness to reality. Instead, it provides a framework for facing reality more resiliently. When obstacles arise, a strong vision serves as an emotional anchor. People without a vision easily give up in the face of difficulties, but those with a magnificent obsession see obstacles as part of the larger story they are building. Robbins invites readers to begin by clearly defining their vision. It's not just about wanting to be successful or wanting to be happy, but more specifically, what kind of life do I want to create? How do I want the world to remember me? What daily experiences will make my life feel whole? By answering these questions, we slowly sketch out a future that's not only appealing, but also feasible. There's profound psychological power in having a vision of the future. Studies show that people with a long-term vision tend to be healthier, happier, and more productive. Vision acts like a magnet. It pulls us out of the daily grind, transforms routines into meaningful rituals, and rekindles passion when the world seems dim. In other words, a compelling future isn't just a goal, it's medicine for the soul. Dare to have an obsession so big, so noble, that it not only changes your life, but also touches the lives of others. For when we have a future that calls so powerfully, we are no longer simply walking toward a destination. We are pulled by it, as if an invisible force were guiding our steps. Robbins believes that true change isn't just about understanding, but about developing mental habits day by day. In this chapter, he introduces a simple, yet radical experiment: the 10-day mental challenge. A challenge to train the mind to stop being stuck in negative patterns and start thinking productively, empowered and in control. The principle is simple. For 10 consecutive days, you are not allowed to let a single negative thought dominate your consciousness. This doesn't mean you're denying reality or deluding yourself, but whenever a debilitating thought arises, you must immediately redirect it to a more constructive question or interpretation. This is an exercise in mental discipline, a kind of mind detox. However, the rules of this challenge are strict. If you allow a negative thought to linger for more than a few minutes on any given day, the 10-day countdown must begin all over again. Why is Robbins so strict? Because he wants to train the brain like a muscle. Every time we fall back into old patterns, we strengthen them. So, this challenge was designed to truly shift patterns from old habits to powerful new ones. In practice, Robbins suggests replacing every negative thought with a better question. What can I be grateful for right now? What can I learn from this situation? Or how can I make this better? This forces our brains to look for solutions, not excuses. The more we do this, the more our thoughts automatically shift toward productivity. This challenge may sound simple, but that's where its power lies. Like an athlete who trains a muscle daily through repetitive movements, we train our minds through consistent, conscious choices. 10 days can seem like a long time when we were used to giving space to complaints or worries. But once we get through it, new patterns begin to form. Patterns that can permanently change the quality of our lives. Neuroplasticity studies support this approach. The human brain can create new pathways when a habit is practiced repeatedly. With 10 days of mental challenge, we are essentially building a new highway for the mind, a faster path to gratitude, focus, and solutions, rather than the old road strewn with fear and regret. Don't just read or understand, but dare to try. 10 days may seem short, but it could be a life-changing turning point. The question now is, are you brave enough to take on this challenge and let your mind prove far more powerful than you ever imagined? Robbins begins this chapter with a fundamental truth. Our lives are not determined by one big decision, but by a system that repeats itself daily. He calls it the master system, a network of beliefs, values, emotions, and personal rules that silently governs nearly all our choices. This system is what determines why two people with similar experiences can end up with completely different destinies. We may think we have complete freedom to make decisions, but in reality, every decision passes through the filter of this system. If someone believes that failure is the worst thing that can happen, they will stop trying early. But if their belief is failure is a stepping stone to success, they will keep moving forward. The difference in destiny arises not from external conditions, but from the inner system that guides our interpretation. Robbins emphasizes that the master system consists of 5 elements: beliefs, values, rules, questions, and experiential references. Beliefs shape how we see the world, values determine what we consider important. Rules become the emotional conditions we create for happiness. Questions direct our thinking, and references reinforce our beliefs. All of these elements work together, creating a unique reality for each person. Imagine 2 individuals facing financial hardship. The first values security as their highest priority, and the rule that I am only happy if all my bills are paid on time. The emotional stress would destroy them. In contrast, the second person values growth and believes that every problem is a learning opportunity. The same situation produces completely different emotional experiences, all due to different systems. The problem is, most of us never consciously designed this system. We inherited it from family, culture, or childhood experiences without ever questioning it. Robbins challenges us to stop living with the default system and start designing our own master system. In this way, we will no longer be victims of old habits, but architects of our emotional and spiritual future. One practical step is to evaluate your personal rules. Many people set the bar for happiness to hide. They're only satisfied when conditions are perfect. The result is a life full of frustration. Robbins suggests creating more empowering rules, such as, I feel accomplished every time I learn something, or I feel loved every time I give love. By changing our rules, we change our access to happiness. The ultimate control over life lies not in power over others or the external world, but in influence over our own master system. When that system is consciously designed, aligned with our deepest values, every small decision becomes a bridge to our chosen destiny. The question is, are we still allowing the old system to control our lives, or have we begun to build a new one that will lead us to greatness? Everyone, whether they realize it or not, lives with an inner compass. This compass isn't made of metal or a magnetic needle, but rather of the values we hold most important. Robbins calls them life values, principles that determine which direction we move, what we choose, and even how we interpret events. The problem is, most people never realize what values they actually use to navigate their lives. Values are the source of decisions. When we are faced with a choice, our brain automatically compares that choice to our values. For someone who places freedom above all else, a high-paying but controlling job can feel like a prison. Conversely, for someone who prioritizes security, the same job can be a great blessing. The same objective situation can elicit different emotional responses simply because of different values. Robbins emphasizes that inner conflict often arises not because we don't know what we want, but because we're unclear about which values are most important. For example, someone might place love and freedom at the top of their list of values, but when the two collide, they can feel tormented. This is where establishing a hierarchy of values, which ones are truly important and which ones are negotiable, is crucial. Values aren't static either. They're shaped by past experiences, environment, and culture. Many people live by inherited values, not consciously chosen ones. For example, someone might place recognition as their primary value because, as a child, they only received love when they excelled. However, that value may no longer be relevant in adulthood. With awareness, we can reevaluate. Are my values truly mine, or are they simply inherited from others? Robbins invites us to take an inventory of our personal values. Write down what's truly important in life. Not what shoulds are, but what emotionally determines our happiness most. Then, rank those values according to priority. This process is like cleaning a dusty compass. Suddenly, the direction of life becomes clearer, and much of the confusion that previously plagued us begins to fade. We can see concrete examples in the stories of great leaders. Mahatma Gandhi placed truth and nonviolence above all else. These values became the compass that guided him in confronting colonialism without losing his humanity. Similarly, visionary entrepreneurs place innovation or impact as core values, so that every business decision is not just about profit, but about consistency with their inner compass. A meaningful life isn't about having more, but about living in harmony with the values we truly choose. The question is, what compass have you been using? Is it leading you in the right direction, or leading you astray down a path that isn't yours? By consciously choosing our values, we can ultimately navigate our lives toward a purpose that aligns with our deepest selves. Robbins opens this part with a simple but poignant observation. Often, our unhappiness stems not from the realities of life, but from the rules we create for ourselves. These rules are unwritten standards for when we can feel happy, when we can feel like failures, and when we can feel accepted. The problem is, most of these rules are irrational, too narrow, or even impossible to live up to. Imagine someone who sets a rule that they can only feel successful if everyone likes them, or someone who feels they deserve happiness only if every decision they make in life is perfect. Rules like these are like a noose we put around our own necks. The more we try, the more impossible it becomes to meet our established criteria, and the result is only frustration. Robbins emphasizes that rules stem from values. If values are a compass that points the way, then rules are a roadmap that determines when we arrive at our destination. But if the map is too complex or full of dead ends, we will get lost. The value of love, for example, can be a source of extraordinary happiness. However, if someone establishes a rule that they can only feel loved if their partner says, "I love you" 3 times a day, then that noble value can turn into a source of heartache. Herein lies the trap. Many people have wonderful values, but flawed rules. They base their happiness on factors beyond their control, like other people's opinions, luck, or fragile external circumstances. Robbins challenges us to examine our rules. Do my standards make happiness easy to achieve, or are they nearly impossible to achieve? Changing your rules doesn't mean lowering your standards or giving up trying. Instead, it means redesigning your framework so you can feel happy more often, not less often. For example, someone might change their rule from "I only feel successful if I never fail" to "I feel successful every time I try." Even if it means risking failure, this new rule is healthier, more realistic, and still encourages growth. History provides us with numerous examples of the power of sound rules. Thomas Edison didn't feel like a failure despite thousands of unsuccessful attempts, because his personal rule was, "I only fail if I stop trying." With this rule, persistence becomes a source of satisfaction, not suffering. This is proof that rules can change our interpretation of reality. Happiness isn't a gift from outside, but rather a permission we grant ourselves through the rules we set. If your old rules are holding you back from feeling grateful and fulfilled, it might be time to change them. The question is, what kind of rules are you currently living by? And are they moving you closer to happiness or further away from it? Robbins describes our lives as a large tapestry. The threads that make it up are references, experiences, memories, stories, and knowledge we accumulate throughout our lives. Each time we experience something, we add a new thread. Over time, these threads form a pattern, beliefs, attitudes, and identity. In other words, references are the raw materials that build who we are today. The problem is, not all references add color to the tapestry. Some stem from old wounds, failures, or rejections that we hold on to without ever re-examining. Robbins emphasizes that beliefs are never formed from a single event, but rather from a collection of experiences that are repeated or reinforced. If someone is repeatedly rejected, those references can weave a pattern of beliefs. "I am unworthy of love," and that pattern, if left unchecked, can determine the direction of one's life. However, references aren't destiny. You can always add new, stronger, more colorful, and more empowering threads. A great leader isn't one who doesn't fail, but one who deliberately accumulates new references. Enlightening reading, inspiring mentors, courageous experiences that prove their capabilities. In this way, old dark references can be overcome by new, brighter patterns. Robbins gives an example of how someone can change their life simply by seeking out new environments that broaden their reference base. Traveling to different places, talking to people with different perspectives, or attempting previously feared challenges. All of these are ways to add new threads to the tapestry of life. The more diverse our references, the more flexible and rich our interpretation of the world. On the other hand, he warns of the dangers of narrow references. People who only read one type of information, associate with one group, or become trapped in one pattern of experience will build a monotonous tapestry. The result is a worldview that is rigid, full of limitations, and lacking in possibilities. Herein lies our challenge. Are we willing to let these patterns form, or are we willing to consciously enrich our references? Historical examples demonstrate the power of references. Nelson Mandela, despite decades in prison, filled his mind and heart with references to steadfastness, justice, and humanity. He read, discussed, and reflected on great stories, so that when he was free, those references formed a conviction that reconciliation is stronger than revenge. This is proof that consciously chosen references can overcome even bitter experiences. We may not be able to erase old threads from the tapestry of our lives, but we can always weave new, more beautiful threads. The question we must ask ourselves is, what references am I currently allowing to shape my identity? And what new references do I need to add to make my life's pattern a masterpiece, not just a remnant of past coincidences? For Robbins, identity is the ultimate force that defines the boundaries of one's life. If values are a compass, rules are a map. and references are materials, then identity is the final blueprint that gives shape to everything. We never act consistently with what conflicts with our identity. We can try to change, but as long as the old identity remains intact, the change is only temporary. Identity isn't just a label we wear, but rather a definition we hold of who we are. Some people say I'm a failure, and that belief leads them to interpret every event as evidence of failure. Others say I'm a learner, and even when they fall, they see it as part of the learning process. Identity works like a lens. It not only influences how we see the world, but also determines what is and isn't possible for us. Robbins emphasizes that much suffering arises from a gap between old identities and new aspirations. Someone can want to be healthy, but still cling to the identity of I'm lazy. They can yearn for success, but continue to call themselves not the entrepreneurial type. As long as that identity remains unchanged, every endeavor will be an internal battle. This is why true transformation only occurs when we broaden our definition of who we are. Changing one's identity doesn't mean erasing the past, but rather expanding one's boundaries. A recovering addict often declares, "I'm no longer an addict, I'm a warrior." With these new words, they rewrite the roles in their life narrative. New identity gives them permission to act differently, choose differently, and ultimately live differently. History provides numerous examples of this. Muhammad Ali was not just a great boxer because of his skill, but because he claimed the identity of the greatest. This claim was not empty arrogance, but rather an internal compass that shaped his attitude, hard work, and confidence. Likewise, other visionaries rejected narrow definitions and boldly embraced identities broader than those imposed by their environment. However, Robbins warns, identity can become a prison if we allow it to become rigid. Someone who clings to a perfectionist identity can become trapped in anxiety, because the real world is never perfect. Identity must be flexible, able to grow over time so that it becomes a means of expansion, not a new limitation. A healthy identity is not a rigid label, but a dynamic statement. I am an evolving being. Ask yourself, who am I really? And does that definition expand or limit my life? Because ultimately, identity is the ultimate key. If we dare to define ourselves in new ways, the world will respond to us in new ways. The question is, are you ready to expand your identity and open the door to a greater life? Robbins recognizes that we live in an unprecedented era, an increasingly connected world, where borders between countries, cultures, and even time are fading. He calls it the global village, a global village where individuals can connect, learn, and influence one another. The greatest resource is no longer material wealth, but access to information, ideas, and connections across borders. In the past, power was often measured in land, gold, or armies. But today, the greatest power comes from the ability to access knowledge and use it to create change. A young person with a computer and an internet connection can create innovations that change the lives of millions, without having to own a factory or an empire. The global village offers new opportunities for anyone who dares to take the leap. However, these opportunities come with challenges. In the torrent of information, we can become overwhelmed, confused, and even trapped in distractions. Robbins emphasizes the importance of discernment, choosing references that expand, not narrow. Choosing communities that build, not destroy. Because in this global village, we can connect with the greatest inspiration, but we can also be drawn into the negative, debilitating voices. The primary resource in the global village is people. Networks of relationships, mentors, and communities possess power beyond anything else. Robbins encourages readers to become not just consumers of information, but contributors as well. Every idea, experience, or courage to share can add to the collective wealth of the global village. This is a new form of power, not domination, but participation. A concrete example can be seen in the history of the technological revolution. Great innovators like Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, modern entrepreneurs leverage global networks to learn, collaborate, and accelerate innovation. They create not just products but ecosystems that connect millions of people. This power stems from seeing the world not as a collection of boundaries, but as one vast community. However, Robbins also reminds us of the responsibility that comes with this power. The global village can become a breeding ground for hatred and manipulation if used without awareness. Therefore, we are challenged to choose our contribution. Do we want to be part of a flow that expands life, or a flow that narrows it? Power is in our hands. Not because we possess everything, but because we can connect with anyone and anything we need. The global village offers us the opportunity to expand our identities, values, and influence far beyond geographical boundaries. The question now is, will you be a mere spectator in this global village, or an active participant in rewriting the face of the world? After 6 full days of delving into your inner system, from values, rules, references, to identity, Robbins concludes this section with a powerful call: awaken your inner giant. For him, 7 days of transformation aren't just a brief mental exercise, but a gateway to a new life. Day 7 isn't about adding new theories, but about tying all the lessons together into a final decision. Robbins emphasizes that every true change always begins with a decision. It's not a small decision we can take back, but an unwavering commitment to live according to our chosen values, follow healthy rules, weave new references, and define a broader identity. Without this decision, all previous concepts will remain mere discourse. He encourages readers to stop procrastinating. We often say, "Someday I'll change," or "when conditions are better, I'll start." But Robbins reverses that logic. Change doesn't come after conditions improve. Conditions improve after we decide to change. Day 7 is about stopping promises for tomorrow and starting choosing today. This narrative feels almost spiritual. Robbins compares big decisions to lighting a campfire. Once a spark is made, the fire can grow, warming us and providing light for the long journey. However, if we refuse to make that spark, we will continue to walk in the dark, no matter how much wood or knowledge we gather. History proves the power of this decision. Every great figure, from Abraham Lincoln to Martin Luther King Jr., began their transformation with a personal decision to no longer live in compromise, not because they knew the outcome, but because they had the courage to say, "This is the way, and I will not back down." Robbins invites us to place ourselves among those who have had the courage to make such a big decision. However, this chapter is also full of tenderness. Robbins doesn't demand perfection. He knows that humans will fall, stumble, and even doubt. But with a strong resolve, falling no longer means quitting. Falling is simply part of the journey, and each time we rise, we strengthen the new identity we choose. We started by discovering our inner system, then reorganizing its values, changing its rules, adding new references, expanding our identity, realizing the power of the global village, and now making a big decision. The question is, do we dare to stop just reading and start living with the giant that has been sleeping inside us? There are moments in life that quietly mark a profound shift the day we stop being spectators and begin to become architects of our own destiny. Robbins calls that moment a day that will change your life, a day defined not by a calendar or external celebrations, but by an inner decision to commit to the life we choose, not the life we are forced to live. Robbins highlights the power of decision as the key difference between those who live with clarity of direction and those who are lost in confusion. Every great achievement, every story of awakening, always begins at the same point: a non-negotiable decision. It's not simply wanting to be happy or hoping for success, but an absolute commitment. I will make this life meaningful, whatever the cost. It reminds us that many people wait for a special day to change their lives. Birthdays, New Year's, or moments of crisis are often cited as reasons to start. However, Robbins emphasizes, a special day isn't something that comes from outside. It's special because we choose it, because we decide to make it a turning point. Real-life case studies prove this. Consider Nelson Mandela, who, while in prison, decided that his life would not be spent in hatred, but in the struggle for reconciliation. Or a small business owner who decided to break free from the habit of blaming circumstances and start taking responsibility for the growth of his business. It wasn't circumstances that changed them, but internal decisions that ultimately changed external circumstances. Robbins calls a decision a commitment to action. Without action, a decision is just a dream. However, once action follows, it becomes a new reality. The key question is, do you dare to make a decision that no longer has a way back? Because only when the door to the past closes do we truly step into the future. Robbins also emphasizes the importance of focus. True decisions don't stand alone, but are guided by a clear vision. If we decide to change, we must know where that change will take us. Commitment without direction only leads to frustration, while commitment supported by a vision becomes an unwavering energy. Ultimately, this chapter leaves us with a resounding question. If today could be the day that changes your life, what decision would you need to make now? Not tomorrow, not next week, but today. Because a life-changing day is not determined by destiny, but by our courage to choose to make it a true turning point. On any great journey, a map is everything. Robbins begins by asserting that life without a purpose is like sailing without a compass. We can move, even fast, but never truly arrive where we want to go. Clarity is power, because it gives direction, justification, and meaning to every step. He distinguishes between vague desires and concrete goals. Almost everyone says they want to be happy, healthy, or successful. But Robbins asks, what does being healthy mean to you? What is your definition of success? Without a clear definition, we're just chasing shadows. Vague goals don't energize. Specific, measurable goals can ignite the fire within. Robbins invites us to see the pattern of great people. Every extraordinary achievement, from scientific discoveries to timeless works of art, is born from a clarity of vision so detailed it can almost be touched. Thomas Edison didn't just want to invent light. He knew what the light bulb should look like, how it should work, and how long it would last. His clear vision kept him going through thousands of failures. However, Robbins is also realistic. He knows that setting goals often evokes fear. Fear of failure, fear of inadequacy, or even fear of success. But this is precisely where the power of clarity lies. When goals are clear, fear turns into challenge. Uncertainty becomes a path that can be explored step by step. He then offers a simple framework. Write down what you want, why you want it, and when you're committed to achieving it. These 3 questions, while seemingly simple, can separate wishful thinking from genuine intention. By writing them down, we begin to commit ourselves to a concrete direction. Robbins emphasizes that goals are not simply wish lists, but compelling visions. True purpose doesn't merely satisfy the ego, but moves the soul. If goals are limited to material things or status, they quickly lose their driving force. But when goals are born from deeper values, they become fuel that endures despite storms. Robbins asks us to pause, not just to reflect, but to write down truly meaningful life goals. He asks, if your life were a masterpiece, what would you like to see when it's finished? This question isn't empty rhetoric, but rather a gateway to a new direction, because clarity of purpose not only gives direction, but also gives you a reason to live life to the fullest. Clear goals provide direction, but only goals lived out daily can truly transform lives. Robbins highlighting a common mistake. Many people write down resolution lists, set goals, and even visualize them, but fail to make those goals part of their daily lives. As a result, goals remain merely notes, not reality. He emphasized that true purpose is something we breathe, live, and strive for every day. It's not just a financial goal or career achievement, but the reason we wake up in the morning. Robbins calls it the power of purpose, a force that gives meaning to fatigue, makes sacrifices seem worthwhile, and makes challenging journeys feel worthwhile. Studies of the lives of great people bear this out. Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist and Nazi concentration camp survivor, discovered that those who survived were not the physically strongest, but those with a clear purpose for living. Whether it was to reunite with family, complete a work, or share their story, without purpose, suffering becomes unbearable. With purpose, suffering becomes a path. Robbins reminds us that goals must always be connected to our deepest values. If our goals are merely to conform to social standards like owning a fancy car or a high-ranking position, we can achieve them all, but still feel empty. Conversely, when goals align with core values, each step feels consistent, and each achievement brings authentic joy. He also encourages us to make a habit of reviewing our goals daily. This isn't to add pressure, but to keep the flame burning. By rewriting, reflecting on, or even reciting our goals each morning, we strengthen our belief that our lives are moving in the right direction. This small discipline, Robbins says, is like oxygen for a soul-seeking growth. Furthermore, Robbins emphasizes that a truly powerful goal creates a force of attraction. We no longer have to force ourselves to work hard. The goal itself pulls us forward. He compares it to gravity. The bigger the goal, the stronger the pull. And in that pull, perseverance, courage, and even creativity are born that we never knew we had. Don't let your goals stay on paper. Let them be the reason you take action today. Because ultimately, it's not just the achievement that brings happiness, but the journey undertaken with a clear purpose. And in that journey, we discover not only what we're pursuing, but also who we truly are. Robbins begins his discussion with a simple but poignant question. How often is your mind a prison, not a liberator? Many people get caught in a cycle of negative thoughts, worry, guilt, anger, or disappointment, and forget that the quality of our lives is determined not by our circumstances, but by the mental focus we choose. This 10-day challenge was born to reverse that pattern. The essence is simple. For 10 full days, we train ourselves to give no space to negative, debilitating thoughts. This doesn't mean ignoring reality, but rather training our mental muscles to constantly seek solutions, lessons, and empowering perspectives. Robbins believes that once this pattern is established, it can permanently change the way we view life. This challenge isn't easy. Once we start, old thoughts will rebel. We'll be tempted to complain, get angry, or feel helpless. But that's where the power lies. Every time we reject negative thoughts and replace them with more constructive questions, what can I learn? How can I use this? We're building new habits. Robbins emphasizes that the goal of this challenge isn't just to think positively, but to set a new standard for the quality of our thoughts. It's like a mental detox, removing the toxins of complaints and fears and replacing them with nutrients like beliefs, visions, and strategies. In 10 days, we learn to directly experience the energy difference that arises when the mind is controlled by intention, not by old habits. He offered an interesting analogy. A healthy body comes from disciplined exercise, and a healthy mind comes from disciplined focus. If we can commit to training our bodies for 10 days, why not train our minds with a similar challenge? And precisely because the mind is the source of all action, its impact is far greater than physical exercise alone. The personal histories of many individuals attest to the success of this method. Robbins recounts how people previously overcome by anxiety began to feel calmer and more focused simply by consistently pursuing challenges. They no longer react impulsively, but instead begin to respond to life with a newfound clarity and calm. Choose 10 days in your life to test yourself. 10 days without complaining, without lamenting, without giving room to helplessness. 10 days to prove that the mind is not a master, but a tool that can be directed. If we succeed in this challenge, it's not just the mind that changes. Our entire life will move in a more empowered direction. After a long journey exploring the power of the mind, setting goals and shaping identity, Robbins invites us to the deepest layer of life, contribution. He calls contribution the ultimate gift, the greatest gift a human can give and receive. Because ultimately, success that isn't shared leaves nothing but emptiness. Robbins highlights the paradox of modern life. The more people pursue happiness through personal achievement, the greater the sense of emptiness they feel. People can have wealth, status, even health, but without contribution, all of that feels empty. True happiness, Robbins says, comes not from what we get, but from what we give. Human history is replete with evidence of this. Gandhi, for example, did not possess great wealth, yet his life was a beacon of light for millions through his contributions to freedom and dignity. Similarly, Mother Teresa found happiness not in having more, but in giving more to those least empowered. Robbins emphasizes that contributions don't always have to be grand or spectacular. Often, contributions come in simple forms: listening sincerely, helping selflessly, or inspiring through life's example. The value of a contribution is determined not by the magnitude of the action, but by the sincerity of the intention behind it. He also reminded us that contribution broadens our identity. When we focus solely on ourselves, our identity is narrow, fragile, and easily shaken. But when we begin to live for something greater than ourselves, we become part of a broader historical flow. Therein lies a sense of serenity, knowing that our lives are not just about us. Contributions, Robbins says, also flow back. Giving not only makes the world a better place, but also enriches us with gratitude and peace. In giving, we discover that true abundance never runs out. In fact, the more we give, the more we feel that life is full. What will you leave behind for this world? Robbins doesn't invite us to seek instant answers, but rather to reflect on the broader direction of life. Because ultimately, the greatest achievement isn't what we accumulate, but the legacy we leave in the hearts of others. Every journey has an end, but a true ending opens the door to a new beginning. Robbins concludes his book with a profound reflection. Destiny is not something predetermined, but rather something shaped by our decisions. A lesson in destiny teaches that life is a consequence of the direction we choose, not a random gift from fate. Robbins emphasizes that humans often misunderstand destiny. Many view it as a predetermined and unchangeable path. However, he says destiny is the result of the decisions, habits, values, and identities we build. If we want to change our destiny, we don't need to wait for external miracles. We just need to have the courage to change our choices within. He describes life as a vast river. We can let the current carry us in any direction, or we can learn to control the course with the oars we hold: our beliefs, goals, actions, and contributions. Those who succumb to the current often end up in places they don't want to be. Those who consciously hold the oars are able to reach their chosen harbor. Robbins also links this lesson about destiny to contribution. A self-centered life may yield great accomplishments, but true destiny lies in touching the lives of others. That is the deepest meaning of the human journey, leaving a legacy that transcends time, not just a name on a piece of paper. Robbins reminds us that destiny is not a final destination, but rather an ever-evolving journey. Every time we make a new decision, we rewrite our destiny. Every time we choose to grow, give, and act with courage, we expand the possibilities of destiny itself. Ultimately, a lesson in destiny is an invitation to live with full awareness, not waiting for tomorrow to change, not leaving life to chance, but choosing to rise today. Reset our course and move forward with the confidence that we are the architects of our own destiny. The book concludes on a note that almost sounds like a prayer, that within every human being there is a sleeping giant. True destiny lies in having the courage to awaken it, to empower it, to change ourselves, change others, and ultimately change the world. And now, our journey has come to an end. From undying dreams, from thrilling convictions, from solo-pinning questions, to the moment we realize destiny is not a gift, but a work. Tony Robbins teaches that within every human being, there is a giant waiting to be awakened. That giant is not about the power to conquer the world, but about the courage to conquer oneself. We've walked through 26 chapters, each step an invitation to stop living in fear and start living with decision. Purpose is born and meaning is born. Legacy. The question is no longer whether you can, but whether you dare to choose today as a turning point. Remember, change doesn't come tomorrow. It begins the moment you say, enough. The moment you dare to close the door on the past and light the fire for the future, that's the moment the giant within you opens its eyes. And if this journey has touched you, don't let that fire die down. Share this video so more people can dare to awaken their giants. Subscribe, because there are so many more stories, insights, and journeys that will lead us further. Leave a comment about what decision you will make today, because every word is the first step toward change. Your life is no accident. It's a matter of decisions. And today could be the day that changes everything.